Good afternoon. My name is Dale Rodriguez, and this is Flabonga Monthrothacube. With me today, I've got my co-host
Tony Stevenson
and our fantastic guest,
Richard Sargent.
Awesome, Richard. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you the obvious questions first.
Yeah.
We know your name. What is Principal Point?
What is it?
Yeah.
Principal Point is my little teeny tiny consultancy business that I run. And what it does is it works exclusively with software vendors who are targeting accountants and bookkeepers. So I don't work directly with accountants. I work with the software vendors, and my job is to try and help them understand, communicate, and build better products for accountants and bookkeepers. That's what I do. And I do lots of things to try and support that, from training and content and ubiquitous consultancy services. But it's all aimed at trying just to make what they do more meaningful and more impactful for what is, I think, one of the greatest professions in the world. I would say the oldest, but that's something different, isn't it?
That's something very, very different. Although if you put accountant into Instagram or TikTok, it's code for the oldest profession.
Yeah. Yes. Side hustle.
You should see my OnlyFans. There's lots of feet pics. They'll never know it's me.
Dick pics, as they say.
Yeah. How did you get into consulting? Because it's quite a niche space. I think it's one that's needed. Because sometimes there's a gap between accounting firms, bookkeepers, and the software vendors. How did it come about? Like, what sparked it initially?
Consult sounds remarkably like insult as well, so I need to be quite careful here. I think, my journey is that I joined a business called Sift, which owns Accounting Web, for those you know Accounting Web, here in Bristol, for a different part, kind of sister business to Accounting Web. And then I left briefly to go and work in a stag and hen weekend company, which was very good fun. This is all preparing me for a life of accountants. And then I came back and I worked in Practice Web, which builds and runs websites for accountants. And at the time, that's a very cool and radical thing to do. This is like in the very early 2000s. And then I became the managing director of that business. And then in 2014, when I finally left with the permission of my wife, I decided that I wanted to take a little bit more control and lose a lot of the responsibility of running what was then quite a big and complicated business. And I thought I was going to carry on working directly with accountants, and then I realized I had nothing to say to them at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that put the kibosh on my plans. But then I realized
just you in a room asking for money, saying nothing.
Yeah, exactly. What can you do? So I
live in the dream.
But what I did realize was that actually all my contacts and networks had kind of expanded out into the world of technology a lot more, because I was running the business, directly with clients, and then I had some opportunities to work with some businesses like free agent Kevin McCallum very early on, was very supportive of me, and very quickly I decided that this was much more of a natural home for me. And I realized that we have some amazing salespeople, great product people, awesome developers, but not a lot of people who actually really understood the world of accountants. And I felt like I had much to kind of contribute to their kind of accelerating their understanding. And that's kind of how I got started, really.
Do you find that, because Principal Point has been running for, I think, 10 years now, right?
Yeah, 11th year.
You must have seen quite a few changes in the industry. Would you say the bridge or the gap between accountants and software vendors is getting closer? Are they understanding each other better now than they did 10 years ago?
I'm not sure you can measure it in that kind of closeness way. I think it's a bit elastic, to be really honest. We tend to kind of see these times where they're very, very closely aligned, and then they kind of pull away from each other. And I think some of that has to do with, there's been a bit of a journey actually in terms of technology in the last 14, 15 years or so, which I think is hard to ignore. And our good friend Ian Phillips described it in a beautiful way to me recently, so I give him full credit for this. But
I love Ian. He's one of my faves.
Yeah, very smart guy. he kind of put the words into my mouth that I've been thinking. So I'm gonna, I kind of got there as well, but he did it better than me. But he said that when the cloud technology first kind of came out, in terms of how it impacted the world of accountants and bookkeepers, it was a very aspirational thing. So basically, the only marketing phrase that Xero needed early on is "We're not Sage 50," right? And then that was it. And everyone goes, "Okay,
pretty much, yeah." Green versus
but then
blue, I remember that.
it fueled a time of real optimism and possibility and understanding what it could be for data. And I thought that was, a really interesting way of describing that kind of drive and energy early on. And I kind of felt that it was much more kind of dragging people to the future from the software side. I think with the rate of increased regulatory requirements coming through, I mean, not least from MTD for VAT initially, which kind of a bit behind the curve in terms of the global way in which tax authorities have been developing. Things like AML, classic example of that. And now MTD for IT, a lot of the focus has been on resolving pain. How do we cope, manage, understand, take clients forward? And so a lot of that kind of aspirational stuff has been subordinated with trying to fix shit that's kind of landed on your lap. And until I think this phase of MTD IT is finished, or when this phase of MTD IT is finished, I think we've got much more of a chance to kind of become aspirational again. And I think that aspiration is really going to be born out of the fact that the promise of and the desire and the original aspiration for cloud is to kind of have better workflows, better data, better workflows, better results, more interesting stuff to do to offer people, and all the rest of it, taking people on a journey, their clients on a journey. And I think we're going to get there with this because most of the limited companies who are VAT registered should be kind of sorted. Says, well, a lot of them are. You've got a higher degree of chance of having much more kind of systemization in terms of what we can deal with self-employed people. There'll always be people who don't fit into that model, but that's where we are. So to order to run and stay on top of all of that, you have to have a much more systemized practice. And I think so. We've all kind of got there eventually, but it's just taken maybe 18 years when we finally finish this phase to kind of get that promise. And then we've got things in place, which means we can become much more aspirational again. So closeness and far apart, I think it's kind of been tugging and pulling, but the motivations around that, I think, are, slightly bigger than the dynamics within just tech and accountants and bookkeepers.
That was a fantastic answer. Thank you. Like it was deep, insightful. Like you kind of explained what you meant. Really appreciate that because you're right. It's not a simple yes or no thing. I'm going to jump into the comments very, very quickly because people are saying hello. Tom Johnson, he was on last week. He says hello. Marcus Batson is bigging you up. Afternoon, 10 out of 10 guests to have on. Mr. S has one of the most eclectic music tastes out there. We'll get into that later. Sam Green, I think he's on holiday. Afternoon, chaps. I'm on the beach in Cornwall, but wanted to check in. Sam, that's commitment.
That is. Which beach are you on? I'd like to know, Sam. I know Cornwall quite well.
Okay. And then Tom Johnson's got a comment, possibly a question. I haven't read it yet. Let's see how this goes. I spoke to an accountant today who said the biggest disruption to his firm's growth and adoption of new tech has been trying to keep up and implement new regulations.
Yeah.
Kind of agrees with you there, Richard.
Do you know what? It's not just a UK problem as well, right? So I go and lean on my box affiliation. Let me give them just a little bit of a big up here. Proud sponsors. But so I get to meet
proud sponsors of what now? What are they sponsoring? They sponsor you?
No, I work for them, right?
They sponsored Richard's water bottle.
That's what my water bottle. Box International, right? So the global network of accountants and lawyers, but it means I get to see and hear about what's going on from all over the world, which is the reason why I love it. One of the big things that came up in the conference recently was the impact of things like e-invoicing in Europe and the journey towards e-invoicing. That's a very different kind of journey, but that will hit us later down the road. But that is one of those kind of regulatory things that hits people, and it comes on top of lots of other kind of EU regulatory change, on top of domestic regulatory change. So we're just the same as everybody else out there at the moment. We really are.
Can I ask you a mean question?
Yeah.
Like super mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Almost borderline rude. If I were a genius fintech developer and I've created the next best thing, why would I employ you to help me get to? Could I employ you to help me get to market? And why should I?
In terms of a go-to-market, I'm probably not your guy, right? The
Okay.
people do it much better. I'm CRAP at marketing. That's why I hire marketers. Big up Adam Clark, he just kind of popped up. Adam doesn't work with me and for me. Helps me with some of my own stuff.
Okay.
Elizabeth Carter, who you know from ICB days, used to work
She's
with
awesome.
me. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Callum McCrae, I can't compete with those people. I hired those people because they know that stuff really, really well.
I'll have to drop in Kirsty Mitchell in the free agent team here. Sorry,
It's a free agent team.
I can't not do that because Kirsty would never speak to me again.
Fine, in that case, James Richardson from the KR crew.
Because they're awesome.
They're all good at this stuff. Granular
Yeah.
detail, know how to word things very, very well. Yeah.
The difference with those people, unless they're freelancing, they're not going to help your friend, right? So I'm talking about people who are kind of out there. So Elizabeth.
Okay.
You got the journeys of the world and the people out there who can do that stuff so well. Systems.
Your degree, yeah. All right, give you that.
I'll leave it to them.
So, as a new FinTech startup, why would I need to work with you, or why do I want to work with you?
I struggle a little bit with the early stage businesses. I think a little bit. They have one thing which I really can't help them with, and which is budget. And I really like working with fintech vendors who have budget. It can really help.
Yeah, they can pay you, right? They can actually pay you for your services.
I love that.
Your brutal honesty is fantastic. I love it.
You can end up giving an awful lot, and it's not often kind of reciprocated. And
look at this.
I remember his charity.
Elizabeth Carter. Marketers make the world go round. Richard, you've increased our audience like tenfold, by the way. By being on the show. Thank you.
And that's 5. So I don't know what the maths is. Half person genie.
Well, usually it's like my mum who might comment,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, why would they work with me? I tend to work with businesses if they've got a very specific kind of problem or challenge or something that they need to kind of to understand, fix, or put into kind of context, and that's where I really kind of add a lot of value. So if it's just generally kind of like how do we go to market, I can do a lot of that kind of stuff if it's in terms of context of how you fit within the marketplace and some of the kind of like the messaging you might choose, and I can do a lot of that kind of work, but I would never be able to kind of put that into a campaign and all the rest of it.
Tony, I think it's time for the coffee question. Yeah.
Can I was gonna just touch on something Richard said. I'm patiently waiting with just the questions just right now. Ring, ring, ding, 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 ding. Because as Richard knows, him and I share a similar like kind of inner nerd on this type of stuff. And I could talk about it all day, right? So I just think that you're so right about that. So I got into a conversation some time ago about MTD-IT and about I can't remember the person I was speaking to at an event, and they were slightly salty about software vendors feeling like, well, you guys have got it great because of MTD for IT, and like, well, that's just, that's what you want. And like, feelings aside on MTD for IT, personally think that it's a good thing for the economy, but will be painful in the short term. I understand why people are griping about it, right? No one likes big change for what feels like not maybe immediate returns. But in the longer term, we'll have lots of benefits. But it also does distract from the good stuff about cloud and about like the improvements in technology, because you're being forced to do it, right? We kind of want to focus on the carrot, not on the stick, because it's like there's a load of upside to this. It's not just fixing a pain. There is like a lot of opportunity and a lot of ways to improve your clients' lives and your lives as practitioners. So it's easy to get kind of drawn down the road of negativity around it. And I completely understand why people are are wary of the change. There's a lot of work that's going to have to go into it for a lot of people for for a good while yet. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that this stuff was out there helping people before this became an urgent need to fix that pain across the course of the next 3 years. So we should have Ian on. Like, Ian's great. I love Ian. He's really cool dude. I worked a lot with him when I was at Xero. I will ask the coffee question now. So if we can all agree that like your local artisan brew house is going to give you like the best coffee experience, if that shop is unavailable, didn't exist, and you are stuck in a world of large coffee chains, what is your go-to coffee choice and the one that you would avoid? I'm prefacing this by assuming that you drink coffee, which is what I should have asked at the beginning, but you haven't said I don't drink coffee yet.
I do. I enjoy coffee. So where would I go? Where would I go of all the major chains? I do struggle with it because things like Costa is just buckets of black water. I resent them for both the quality of the coffee, but the sheer size. It's just
available.
It's like I think the greatest service station in the world is Stafford Services North. It's just unarguably the best service station in the UK. I stop over there when I go up to Liverpool to watch football and all the rest of it, and I love it for everything. But I resent the fact that I have to buy a double espresso to kind of get anywhere near something which kind of tastes nice and doesn't give me like a bladder that size that I have to stop at the next service station just because I've drunk all this coffee. So Costa's, I would rather not. I'd go for water and get something else. Starbucks is okay. Number one stuff's okay, but I don't really kind of wander around craving coffee like that in that kind of way. I don't really want to sloshing around on my hand. So
you're a Liverpool football fan?
Yeah. All my family's from Liverpool, so I've had no choice.
Okay.
Yeah. And I married an Everton fan, so how do you manage that?
You say you had no choice. I'm going to tell a story now about somebody that I work with. I don't think she'll mind me saying who it was. So basically, her family are all Everton fans, and she's from the Wirral.
Well, that's fine. You need to have choice, then, don't you?
Yeah. So she, when she was a little girl, she wanted a pony from her dad, and her dad refused to buy her a pony, so she refused to support Everton, and still to this day supports Liverpool.
Superb.
Yep.
That's as good a reason as any, to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
Everyone has a Scottish team as well, don't they? I think. Right, yeah.
Do they?
Well, just presume they do. Well, I just presume everyone does. I was brought up in definitely a culture where you had like your football team, but you needed a Scottish football team as well. And mine was, and still is, Cowden Beath, which is probably one of the worst teams ever. I just chose it because I love the name. And I actually went to Cowden Beath, and it's like, oh my God, what? Really? This is such an interesting place. So yeah, still sort of the Blue Brazil.
Blue Brazil. So there's obviously free agent Scottish company. So there's a few football fans that I work with. But Kevin Lord, who's a listener of the show, I know he chimed in last week with the comments. He is, I want to say, is he a Hibs fan or is he a Hearts fan? Hibs fan, I think.
Get it wrong.
But him and Martin Bissett that have the same support the same team, and they bonded over it because they're the two.
Yeah, the two.
Well, I thought, is it Stu Hurst and the work that he and his dad do with Scottish football up there, and I caught up with them at the free agent event recently, and they have like 1,500 members of this football club. Stuart Hurd, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And wow, what I just loved it. Fascinating conversation, and what they're doing for grassroots football out there is incredible. So
yeah,
they got to do it.
Chairman, I think.
Why have you put Richard Sargent V3 as your name?
There is no reason. No. It become a talking point, isn't it?
I assumed it was because this was your third visit, and we got another three-peat guest.
No, this is this is Richard's first time on the show. He's never been on the show before.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I've asked him many times before, and he's blanked me, and only just now is he gone, I'll do it now. So I'm grateful, by the way. That's not a diss. I'm just. It sounded like a diss, but it wasn't a diss.
I like it. I keep the insults coming.
Okay. Hot sauce or sumo wrestling? You got to give up one or the other for the rest of your life. What are you giving up?
Hot sauce.
You giving up the hot sauce?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sumo.
Word on the street is you make a mean hot sauce.
I don't make it personally. I have it made for me.
Okay.
There's a place just outside of Bristol, a Big Chili Farm, and I've got to know over the years, and we commissioned various kind of hot sauces.
Blends.
Yeah, honestly, brilliant. It's a great thing to try and do as well.
Do you have a favorite kind of pepper or favorite chili flavor that you like? So for me, I love a Scotch bonnet.
Yeah,
Raised on a Scotch bonnet. It's got flavor. I mean,
yeah. Well, the one we did on just before Christmas came up there was a limited run of the last one, which was peach naga.
A peach because it looked like a peach or tastes like a peach or
deceptive name probably.
Yeah, it tastes peachy.
The naga is a super hot on the Scoville, right?
It's not unbearably hot. No.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
Is it the Dorset naga that's? I always thought the naga bit meant it was really hot, but maybe not.
They're quite. I mean, it's quite punchy.
Mm.
But the one that goes down really well is.
You got the Carolina Reaper. That's a hot pepper, and then you've got Pepper X, which is like a genetically modified human filth of a pepper.
So this is one we did for. They've all got different names, right? So every time I'm doing it. So this one is Loving You Too. This is spicy mango hot sauce, which is really nice. That's a hot one, hot and mediums. We've had, some barbecue type ones, and then the last one, Digital Deity 5.
Can we get into this a little bit more, right? So talk me through the process then of having it commissioned. Do you have to kind of like go down, spend time with them, taste it, come up with the ideas you sell? Like, how does it work? Because I'm very interested.
We're going to go on this rate today. It's kind of, to begin with, imagine when you used to go to like a vodka revolution and that sort of stuff. You have like all the different flavored vodka shots, and they're all lined up. And it's kind of a bit like that. So you have lots of different types of like base sauces, and you try like, okay, that's nice. There's mango-y ones and whatever it is, and tomato ones and roasted pepper one. Oh, like that's kind of like your base sauce, and then you have different types of chili. And very basically, it's kind of how hot do you want it, and how does it need to influence the flavor. So then you kind of start layering these things up, and then there's spice that's added to it. So this is it's a mango hot with Indian spices, and just creates a really great balance. You just kind of try some stuff out, and it's quite experimental. And then I went to a food festival here in Bristol about this time last year. And I saw the guy who did it again, and he had this the peach naga one, which is just great, and I just loved it. So I said, "Can I have some of that?" And he went, "No."
Oh, that's fantastic!
And then we kind of beat him down, and then he made a special batch and changed it slightly, and that's it. But I love the fact that it's called something different every time, and I've been kind of trying into my events, and so it's kind of a little bit of stuff that's tied in with it. And who else is doing sauces, right?
No one, and that's cool.
Let's go back a second, so makes own hot sauces or gets hot sauces commissioned. Goes to food festivals. You, sir, are an Epicurean. So,
thank you.
Can I assume you eat meat?
Yes.
Okay, similar question to before, but with meat.
Yeah.
If you could eat one meat for the rest of your life, forsaking all others, what meat / animal are you choosing? You pick one. You can't have any of the others.
Well, I'm gonna say, I mean, they're all pretty shitty they're all pretty bad for the environment, aren't they? So
as much as you want, it's fine.
I'd probably say pork, because I think pork's really, really super versatile. And although you can do lots and lots of things with chicken and stuff like that, then actually you can still mince pork up. Do a great thing with pork mince with lots and lots of spices, lots of fresh stuff like galangal and garlic and ginger and all those kind of chilies, all kinds of lovely, and then make them into like small pork balls, and then cover them in cabbage, effectively, and then stick a skewer through them and steam them. It's just one of my favorite dishes in the world. So I think pork takes you on a whole world. The only thing which I don't really like is pulled pork. I think it sounds disgusting, and just
no. I'm with you on that one too. My frustration with pulled pork is right. A lot of people will make the pork and then slather barbecue sauce all over it. So all I'm tasting is barbecue sauce. I like the pork to be seasoned and minimal sauce, so I'm getting the flavor of the meat and the seasoning. So that's my frustration with pulled pork. It's like
it is a wide-ranging, like, I'm kind of with you on that, and it's
I'd rather have a brisket if I'm going to have any kind of like
and if you think
slow cooked meat.
If you want to roast it as well, you get all kinds of parts that you can do, and then you get belly, Oh yeah, pork belly and bones for the barbecue and ribs. Yeah, and if you got a whole cow, can you imagine how long it take to eat? I mean, it would just be nice. Yeah, pork ears.
Jump into the comments real quick. Kirsty St. John, long time watcher. Hey all, late but on my way to see Brad Pitt. Hashtag flexible working. Thank you for tuning in, Kirsty. People are tuning in while they're at work or on holiday, right? That's what's happening right now. People doing social activities and tuning in. Thank you.
But that's the casual element of the show, right? I can see how you could listen to FM on a beach and be
talking about barbecue and getting salivating as Richard talks about delicious food.
Kirsty, if you do get the chance to talk to Brad and tell him we'll get back to him, we'll have him on at some point.
He has been begging to come on the show.
Yeah, he has. We've just got to find the time for him, really.
Got more important guests like Richard on.
And he needs to know a bit more about accounting before we could really reasonably have him on. So, or technology. So, yeah, if you could just let him know, he's not a no. It's just a maybe at the moment.
Thanks, Kirsty. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Richard, would you like a silly question or a serious question next?
I'm pretty silly, so I'll go for a serious question.
Okay, so one of the things I think I know about you, I could be wrong, is like you do a lot of kind of insights and data. In fact, I rely on your data sometimes because I quote you. What's your most favorite project you've worked on in the last couple of years? Where you've actually let me phrase that. What's the most surprising data you've unveiled in the last kind of 5 or 6 years?
Surprising data.
Yeah, like you did the research, you did the study, you spoke to Accounting Web, and you went, oh, I didn't think it would be that.
That stat you come back to each time as a sort of like, I say this one a lot.
Okay, so if we're talking about that, there was the Accounting Web Intelligence stuff that we did for 4 studies. So that was a distinct kind of program of studies that you might be referring to there, where we would generate lots of stats and lots of information. There was so many interesting things in there. I mean, we talk about the cost of technology, so how much firms are spending, which I think is an amazing stat, how that's moved and shaped over time. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think there was some really interesting stuff around what people find important in terms of communications. So there's one of the studies there was around what's the word I'm looking for? Around the effectiveness of vendor content, which I thought was a superb piece of research. I'm not taking credit for it, but it was what was produced was just so fascinating, and so interesting, and so relevant to so many vendors. So I was just clear the studies were aimed at giving information to vendors, not to accountants. That's the focus of it. And within there, what was really fascinating to me was just the bit I really love and think about a lot, actually, is about when's the best time to communicate to accountants and bookkeepers. So there's some stuff around there about when you should send your emails. And there's some stuff around there about not podcasts, around webinars.
Okay.
Just think how much vendors spend in terms of creating, advertising, marketing, putting on just those 2 things, just emails and webinars. And the best thing, and the reason why I say this is because I think it shows so much behavioral stuff behind it, which again I think is really, really important. So what they discovered was that the best time to send an accountant an email for them to read would be overnight. So don't send it during the day because we're kind of busy, right? So the best time for us to read these emails and when we get the most likelihood of getting eyeballs on them is from between 6:30 and 8:30 in the morning.
Commuting, dead time, yeah.
You're waking up in the morning, you're having your coffee, you're having your breakfast, you're maybe getting the kids out, whatever's going on in your life, you're sitting there kind of going through catching up with some of your emails. It's time I can dedicate to kind of looking and going through before I sit down in the office and start doing work, right? Because then it's all clients. That's what I'm doing. I'm not here waiting for your marketing stuff to arrive. I've got stuff to do. And there's a bit of a blip of interest again around lunchtime-ish. And then you get more kind of right at the very end of the day. So 6 o'clock through to 6:30, into kind of early evening. But the main concentration is first thing in the morning where I can have a look. So I thought that was kind of interesting and started kind of reinforcing this idea that you're dealing with really busy people, right? You're not their primary interest, even though what you're talking about might be super high importance. It's still got to fit in with the reality of daily work life. And then the stuff around webinars really complemented that. So what it said was, if you sign up to a webinar, what's the likelihood that you'll attend it? Very roughly, So how seriously do you take these webinars you're signing up to? And 33% of people said, it was a nice round number, there or thereabouts, they said that if I intend to go to a webinar, I'm going to that webinar. It's in my diary as a thing that I'm going to do. And I will stop what's around me because this is a meeting, effectively, that I'm having with somebody who's trying to communicate something to me. And I thought that was such a high stat. Now, from a vendor's perspective, 33% turnout would be kind of average to kind of good, right? Not like Tony does.
Slightly below what we would accept, but as the numbers have gone up, the percentage has gradually dropped.
Tony's like, Fred is amazing. We get 75% all the time, every time.
Yeah, we don't, but we have a pretty consistent, and as the numbers have gone up over time, the percentage has gradually tailed off to slightly higher than that, but not not 75.
Industry standard would chime with Tony, right? It's kind of there or thereabouts, right? It's just the other side of the coin, and this isn't scientific, right? These are people just expressing it rather than you having stats to hand. So what is this? So then they go, well, what happens to all the rest? And the bit that was really super surprising was the number of people said, no, I'll go back to them. If I miss it, that's fine, but I wait for the recording to come back, and then I'll go back. And how often do you do that? So I don't remember the portions, but a significant amount of people saying, if I can't watch it live, I will watch it afterwards. And I do watch it afterwards. And what people do, you can dig into it. And I did some interviews with people and dug into this more and more and more. The webinars are almost the replacement for podcasts, which actually scored extremely poorly. The podcasts scored very, very badly in the research. Webinars score very, very highly in terms of lots of different metrics.
Interesting.
And what it means is that you kind of have these people and that say, oh, if I can't make it, I won't, but I will catch up with it. And now people talk to me about how they have effectively, they create playlists of all the webinars that they've missed and want to go back to. And they might be able to do that day. They might do it, at the end of the week. They might be a month down the road, but they don't want to miss what's being communicated. And then people telling me about habits. A lot of people listen to webinars in the car as they're driving to the office. They listen to webinars in another screen as at the end of the day when they're doing some of the work. They just have it playing there and they're kind of tuning in every now and again. People have it when they're doing the chores at home, going to the supermarket, all this kind of stuff. So you fit these webinars into your entire life, not just into that delivery slot of 11:30, 12 o'clock on a Wednesday.
That's fascinating, because I thought when you said, look, podcast scored poorly, that there was going to be something to do with the video element of webinars and the fact that you could see people. But actually, if people are just playing them without being able to see them because they're in a car, and we know people aren't going to be driving and watching the telly, or on a second screen with the screen off or in the background kind of thing, then that sort of negates that.
It to me, again, it illustrates the fact that we're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with humans. We're not dealing with accountants and bookkeepers. You're dealing with real life people who have stuff on their plate, who have lives to live, and they want your information. And if they think what you're talking about is going to be valuable, they will make the time to listen to you. Mm-hmm. So from a vendor's perspective, the timings are important, but they don't really, really matter when it comes to webinars, really. It fixes much more on quality over quantity, substance. It means that you don't have to worry too much about having things on graphics, because a lot of people are actually listening to this. And also the long tail impact of those webinars are incredibly long. So you should never measure the impact of them from a one-off broadcast. It has to be considered over a much longer tail.
Not quite the same thing, but we measure the stats for FM, and we know that doing it the day after FM is pointless. Doing it like a week or two later is when you get better metrics, because people watch this later, they listen later. They don't watch always live.
Also send out the emails, and don't just send out once. You missed it, unfortunately. Well, what about a digest? Every month you send out to your user base saying, here are the webinars we ran today. Here is a curated playlist, because we know you like playlists. So here's our playlist. Here's the things you might want to listen to.
So I have the privilege of being relatively involved in the webinar, and I say delivery, because I present, certainly not all of them, and not as high a percentages as I used to, because we got loads of other people that do it, and there's only so much useful life in just listening to Tony rattle on about the same subject, which is nice to have diverse voices. But it's always fascinated me and hugely impressed me with the free agent team who were involved in the delivery sort of behind the scenes about how much we've put into, and I say we, not including myself, like the team have put into making sure that like the topics are well researched and like relevant to our audience, that we get great guests on like Dale, and that we nurture beforehand and make sure that we get the message out there as much as possible, and that then through the process of the webinar that we have delivered like valuable content. We haven't made it too much just about the free agent product, so we've come up with this sort of structure where we have a demo at the end for those that want to hang around and just have a look and feel, because we have people that are partners and people that aren't, and then like just capturing interest through the webinar and having people on hand to follow that stuff up directly with people. And I remember being so involved in so many conversations where people kind of like disparagingly kind of laugh at webinars and be like, oh yeah, we'll just do another webinar, you know, that's our marketing campaign. I'm like, they're so not created equally. So if you just spin one up and pump one email out to people and that's the end of it, like you will not, and then nothing will happen off the back of it. Like that is one little bit of a much bigger process that is required in order to make sure that people get the value out of it and then also get what they want, which is somebody to give them a shout and follow up with them afterwards if they've expressed interest in it. So yeah, there's so much work that goes into making those things successful, and you know, gradually over time our numbers have crept up and up and up. So
what you guys are both saying, in my opinion, isn't unique to fintech, software, or accounting. It's just good marketing and sales. Right. Make sure you
I think the only thing I would say around that is that you're absolutely right, Dale, and I wouldn't argue against it at all. But what I would say is that the audience of accountants and bookkeepers is quite unique, and we should never forget who our audience is. So certain things work for different kinds of audiences. But you're right, the process of putting these things on, and making it work properly, and everything else is right.
Richard, would you care to explain the comment on the screen?
Can I read it out first for people who are
Yes.
not watching? Marcus Batson.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
For anyone that's not seen it, the Antiques Roadshow inspired merch video with Richard and Tom H. a good few years back is gold.
Capital letters on gold for anyone who's listening, not watching.
Going for gold. That's a throwback. Well, thank you, Tom. Well, thank you, Marcus. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, do you explain it? It was I don't know. It was one of the early. I'm not sure it was a forerunner to Accountex, but it was an early version of Accountex before chaps and chapesses who run it now kind of had it, I think. And it was, I don't know, I went around and got a load of stuff, and Tom and I made a video, and we just kind of did like a, you know, what did you find? What did you find? What did you find? It was the year of the tote bags, as I remember. Let's talk about totes.
The year of the tote bag. Oh dear.
Yeah, it was good fun. It was good fun. But you know, it was definitely before there were all the kind of the merch grab kind of stuff that's gone on over the years. So
I just love like you in tweed with the flat cap on in the ground, some really nice, like kind of, you know, National Trust property with a table, and then Tom telling you that the apron tote bag that you'd picked up was actually an antique and worth 15,000, and you could auction it off.
Way before apron. Yeah, this is when apron was in there. It was a glint in someone's eye.
Yeah.
You know what? I reckon some of our viewers will have vintage merch from back in the day. Like, who's got like the oldest Zero Con T-shirt, or like, Richard, you must have some stuff like that, right? The oldest Zero branded hoodie, or
Nathan Keeley has got, like, I don't know if he's still got it now. Probably replaced it with Lego, but he had like a room where he just sort of used to just kind of like open the door and throw all the old, and you know, anyone that knows Nathan knows that merch is important to him, and that he will take merch from any angle, and he just had this room, and like, you remember him saying to me, his wife was like, stop it, just stop, like, come on.
I'm sure I did find like an old pen from a long time ago, and it was for it might have been a Zero pen, a long C stopped working behind the back of a cupboard type thing. But
I have a receipt bank gilet, a receipt bank branded gilet, which was unusual for anyone to get because they were reserved for staff normally, and I've convinced someone to get me one. That's my claim to fame.
That you can like some brands are quite finicky about that, and I remember there was an incident in my 0 days where a non-staff member had got a 0 staff T-shirt on, and it went down really badly.
It's quite dangerous.
Quite a lot of trouble for that. Yeah.
They could wander onto a stand. They could go into a building. Like there's so many things they could do with that one T-shirt that's supposed to be unique. So no, I get that entirely.
I thought the 0 bread T-shirt that had like some like tracking device in them, just so they could keep.
Beep starts beeping. You step too far away from the stand. Yeah. Very good. I quite fancy doing some quickfire questions if you're up for it, Richard.
I'm gonna mute myself while this happens because I interject too much.
Dale, you can have my set, or you can write your own set of quickfire questions, mate, and then you can run the quickfires.
This is your moment. You shine.
So I've got a new one actually, and I'm going to ask it last because Total Life is Real. I think a vintage swag post on LinkedIn would be awesome. Yeah, that'll get viral, definitely. Let me see if I can. I must have some vintage swag somewhere. Right, so these are just they're quick fire questions, so they are designed to be answered in a short form rather than long form. We mute Dale so he doesn't interject, and then he has to sit there biting his finger and hopping around, wishing he was able to talk. I will ask you 10, and they are from a selected list of 15 that I've got, and they'll keep evolving. So if you're ready, we'll jump right in. What is one skill that you wish you had but don't?
Organised.
+1. Favorite country that you've ever visited?
Well, excluding UK.
I mean, it's up to you, mate.
Italy, so beautiful.
Favorite country that you've never visited? So like the one you want to go to the most.
Finland.
Good shout. Best education system in the world, so my wife tells me most weeks. With hindsight, what alternative career would you like to have pursued if for some reason or other you couldn't have been an accounting technology industry guru?
Oh, definitely an artist of some kind. Fine artist. That's talented. Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
Cauliflower cheese.
Oh, yeah, that's a good shout. That's a cheeseburger.
Which you can have as a main course. You don't have to have as a side.
More. Keep going. More. What is your spirit animal?
Spirit animal? Bees. I love bees.
Okay.
Bumblebees.
The book you have recommended the most often?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, who knew that was a book as well? Most hated.
Didn't know it was a book as well.
I'm not much of a reader. It's not true. I read 2 genres: sports autobiographies and like business self-helpy type.
Well, this is both.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. It's about sport. It's about covering sport. It's about sport, and it's a lot about self-help.
We shall come back to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas as a follow-up question later. Your most hated grammatical error or mispronounced word?
Softwares. Oh,
yes. That is thank you. That is a great one. Yeah. Revenues. If you could not fail, what one thing would you do?
Organise.
Okay. Mine would be Summit Everest. Aside from FM, your favourite podcast?
Sumo Manichi. From 2 people from I think they're based in Melbourne, Australia. But yeah, they're superb.
And this is my new one, which I am I'm hopeful lands well as a question across the fullness of time. What is your best ever 1 in a million trick shot? Brackets. Think hole in one. That type of thing.
Oh yeah, I've got one of those. Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
So back in the days when I was with SIFT, we got Tom Dunkley in the crew. Had a cricket team. I was terrible at cricket. I had the day off. I got asked to be in the cricket team. I was terrible at cricket. I spent the afternoon drinking lager in my garden. I then had to go into town, meet the team, go to this place to play cricket. I was basically half cut and fielding. I spent more time jogging off to go to the toilet and back to where my place was on the outfield than anything else. And then this one ball came flying my way. Someone else ran towards it. They kind of knocked it up in the air straight into my outstretched hand as I was running full pelt and caught it. It was a moment of glory.
That sounds, that is exactly the type of thing I wanted from this question. So I'm going to tell you mine, or one of mine at least, that I think the thing that inspired this question. So it was 2015, and my wife had bought me tickets to the opening game of the Rugby World Cup at Twickenham as England were playing Fiji. We won, but it was a disappointing campaign and a disappointing match because we should have probably won by more. And we were sat pretty close to the top of the gods in the South Stand. And there was a guy behind me who also had been seemingly drinking quite a lot and was a little half cut. And I was sat on the end seat, and he tried to climb over the like the back of my seat and the person who was sitting in the end without kind of just walking out of the end of the aisle. And as he tried to climb over it, he tripped and went to fall down the steps. And there's not really much. It's just kind of fairly steep concrete steps with no real railing or anything like that. And as he fell over me, I chucked my hand out and caught his belt as he went, "What?" and stared down sort of 15 flights of concrete stairs, drunk, as I had hold of his belt. And he turned around to me and went, "I think you might have just saved my life." That's like,
that's an MCU moment, isn't it?
100 times I could have tried to do that and not caught his belt. And I just chucked a hand out, boom, and caught it. And that was, he didn't even go and buy me a beer, though. It still burns from me. I was like, should have come back with, like, you know, in the little hanger.
You didn't do it for the reward, did you, Tony? That's what I like about you.
I did do it for the rewards, yeah, and to be able to talk about it on podcasts in the future, which was...
Man, not all heroes wear capes.
Absolutely right. So, well done, Dal. Well done. Well done. You have another
We need to revisit this cauliflower cheese as a main thing, though. Not that. What? Explain yourself.
Well, it's just, I don't know. It's always been given to me as a main course. I was actually more surprised when I encountered it as like a little side dish. Like embraced dinners is like, what's the point of that?
So you were brought up with the cauliflower cheese being the main dish?
Yeah.
So you were a peasant back in the day, got it?
Yeah, no, lots of things like that. I mean, I'm 70s baby, early 80s child. We were feral, and I lived on things like tinned tomatoes on toast and stuff like that.
Can't knock that one. Tinned tomatoes on toast, beans on toast,
cauliflower cheese.
Yeah. But I've never had that as the main. That's new to me.
Yeah, well, just don't overcook the cauliflower.
Yeah, I like roasted cauliflower. That would go quite nicely. You could stick like a brain. Like barbecued stuff, like some pork belly in there or something that might make it nice. Tell you what I do like on cauliflower cheese. I like blue cheese on there, and also when you go like you get the caramelized onion relish, like if you put that over the top of it as well. That is a nice little flourish because it gives it a.
It sounds like the worst ice cream ever. Like you can. This looks really lovely, and then go into it, it's like, oh my god, what have I done? No, to me, it's the ultimate comfort food for me, as well as fresh pasta with lemon juice and black pepper and salt and pepper. That's it.
Interesting.
It's one of my favourites.
Yeah. That's what I love about you, Richard. You've always got some interesting stuff to say.
You do. Have you always grown up in Bristol? Are you originally from the Bristol area? Yeah,
kind of. I was. All of my family's in Liverpool. I was born in London because that's where my folks kind of moved to, and then my dad got a job in Bristol, so we moved down to Southwest. So I lived just outside of Bristol during my educational years, and then did the usual wandering around the planet for a while, and then came back to Bristol in the late 90s. And
you don't have much of a Bristolian accent.
Yeah.
Well, Bristol's got a very diverse group of accents.
True.
I don't. You're right. I don't.
I've got two things I'd like to ask you about before we close, and we've got about 10 minutes. So I'm going to ask those questions because both of them, I think, are quite important. We have quite a lot of software people that listen to the show, right? As well as accountants and bookkeepers, and obviously software people tend to be quite vocal in the comments, as you've seen from today's broad set of comments that we've had from friends of the show and from new listeners as well, or people that probably already listened but hadn't reached out and done commenting. So we'll say now, if you're like, I want to write a comment and I want to do it, it helps us because we like to do it. So tell us about Accounting 101 and your courses, Richard. Because yes, I see it every now and again. You put a little post up on LinkedIn about these courses, and yeah, just tell us about them, because there's probably people listening now who would benefit from deeper knowledge about accounting and accountants, and I'd like to make that connection.
Okay, so Accountants 101 came back from my early days of starting out my consulting career, if you like, or insulting career, I'd like to call it. And it's that dynamic, as I was telling you before, about going and sit in front of a group of people who are brilliant at what they do, but after about an hour or two, you realize they don't really understand enough about the world of accountants. And I couldn't argue with that, because how do you get to learn this stuff? You know, just parachuted into a chair. And I also kind of quickly understood that there is a lot of received wisdom around the accounting world, that if you're in a corporate environment, is often that knowledge is locked away in a few people's heads. It's like, why did we start this business? Effectively, it's very hard to kind of perpetuate, keep going, and to have that kind of deep level of understanding. So you're just recruiting people that don't really get an opportunity to have a real head start in terms of their understanding of this world. It takes years, I think. It takes a long time to really get to know and form your opinions about things. So you learn bad habits and shortcuts from the people who sat next to you, who might be there for a little while and they leave, and goodness knows what else. So I think corporately, a lot of software vendors are very bad at codifying and institutionalizing that knowledge about their marketplace in a way that's useful for people who work there. So Accountants 101 came from realizing, after 2 hours of one particular session, that we didn't know what we were talking about. So I said, should we just stop there for a limit and then just talk about what accountants do, and then we can see where that kind of takes us and develop us. And that happened to be about 2 or 3 times. So after the second time, the next time I could see it coming. So I anticipated, so before we have these sessions, would it be worthwhile just having a recap about the market and what's going on in there? And that, by that time, I'd already kind of had a way of talking about it, and then that became actually a structured course. So now I run a course called Accountants 101, which is about what accountants do, for whom, and why. And if you're very new to the market, it just kind of helps you get there a bit quicker. When I say market, I mean understanding the profession rather than the market itself. And if you've been around for a while, it often gives people an opportunity to stress test a lot of their assumptions and have an opportunity to think about it in a slightly different kind of way. So I did that, and then I've kind of, over time, it's kind of evolved. So I now do one for finance functions, Finance Function 101. So that's more about those who are selling to businesses. And again, a lot of software vendors will have those dual audiences. About making sure we talk about those. And then over time, we've developed very specific kind of modules, which effectively are standalone courses, but all can be incorporated. And so one around practice management, one specifically around MTDIT, things like that. So it's just a way of kind of saying, how can we put a view of the world or a view of a subject in front of people that they understand? The latest one's around how accountants buy, which is about it's not a sales methodology. It's asking you to sit on the other side of the fence and experience what it's like to be sold to, and to kind of say, well, how do we negotiate that? Because I'm a really big believer that actually, Dale made a really interesting question around by divergence, how far and close apart accountants sell the software world. In terms of product, I'm kind of giving an answer to that. But in terms of the way that we sell, it's very, very wide. It's probably the most fractured and broken I've ever seen it. So the way that vendors sell is now completely out of kilter to the way in which accountants buy. And I think that's a real problem, actually.
So before Dale makes the point that he wants to make. I'm just going to interject and say, if you're an accounting tech business that wants to understand accountants better, you should get in touch with Richard.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There you go.
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with everything you said. There was no counterpoint. It's like I completely agree. The sales approaches have been interesting in my time in this industry. Have varied wildly, and it's something I try and say champion, but talk about. Like when I get asked by vendors, like, what's my opinion on this, and why do I work with certain vendors? I explain like the human element of it makes a difference. When I have an account manager who kind of knows the industry, who knows how, for example, a larger firm might work, or knows our schedules in terms of work-life balance and all that kind of stuff, it makes a huge difference. And they know what can be taken off my plate and my team's plate. Like they are the account managers that are worth the weight in gold. And I have to give props to Sage. The last couple of years, they've really changed. I think they maybe changed how they targeted their salespeople, because the way their account managers have been dealing with me and other people at KR have been phenomenal in just terms of knowing what we need, what we want, and having that open communication. They've done a very good job in changing how they sell. So
yeah,
I think it's an interesting point, and like when I was thinking about recently, which is like the evolution of the size of the businesses that you deal with, because it's when you first start, it's much easier to have that human to human approach because you just have a less requirement for systemization. You're just gathering your first early users. You're probably really engaged with what you're doing if you found the right people, and then over time, as time gets better, you become more systemized, and actually naturally you hire people that are more minded towards sales and less minded towards like the industry part of it. And I think that as time goes by and businesses grow, it's really hard to hold on to that, like that high touch human interaction and keep the same person dealing with that same person. It's something that's quite important as well over time. It's not always manageable, but you know, having four account managers in 12 months is not really what you want, right?
No.
It's one.
I'm not going to let people off the hook with that, though. To be really honest, I'm not. I think that's okay, but I don't think we should accept it. I think it's unacceptable.
No, I think you're right. I totally agree with you. I'm offering the challenge up, I guess, is the
Well, I'll put it in a slightly different way. Okay, vendors want to have neat funnels and great processes, right? So we want to take accountants down a specific kind of marketing funnel and sales funnel, and we have, we can manage our pipelines, and you can think they think very, very linearly, where accounting firms don't think linearly. A lot of firms don't have a thing called a budget. They just have a line, and then every year they kind of assume it's going to go up by 5%. So that's the budget for next year. So any of the software intervention or things they need to think about will be on top of that. And that's not coordinated, that's not planned. The way that you buy is influenced by the size of the firm that you're dealing with. The stakeholders, the peculiarities of that firm, the way it's set up, the personalities you're dealing with, which departments you're dealing with. These things are chaotic. They may seem like they're terribly coordinated in terms of how we sit inside the accounting firm looking out. I don't believe it for an instance. Most of it is absolutely chaotic. So you've got a chaotic system and a system that wants to organize, and you try and push the two things together. What happens? You just get people looking at each other going.
There's a really interesting way of explaining the challenge. Yeah, I think that we should clip that one up, Dale. That is that one's
getting clipped up for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
So again, I 100% agree with what you just said. Like spot on.
The final thing that I wanted to ask you, because we're approaching the top of the hour, was just about your recent trip to Lisbon, Richard.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Because we've managed to get 59 minutes without mentioning it. So
every year I do a deal in Bristol on a boat, and I really love it. I've grown to love it. I didn't enjoy it the first few times, but I've learned to love it very much. And I got to a point to it last year where Bristol I needed to do something else for lots of different reasons, and I haven't got time to talk about now, but. Jen, my amazing VA, and I were talking about it, and we understood that we needed to do it outside of the UK, and we decided on Lisbon, and we had 18 people from the UK come over, and we managed to get some people from some lawyers and accountants and tech people from Lisbon kind of coming for part of it as well, part of that journey, and it was brilliant. It was just an opportunity to have long conversations with people rather than short snatch conversations with people. So yeah, no, really enjoyed it.
Wicked.
Cool. Before we sign off, Richard, one final question. Do you
Yeah.
have any nuggets of wisdoms or one final booyah kind of point you want to leave on, and I'll hit end stream?
Yeah, broaden your music horizons always.
That wouldn't take much from me.